Hey everyone, hang tight. We'll be right there. Hey everyone, it's Julianne Meyer, your host of Own Your Wellness, and I'm excited to be back again. We had some minor technical difficulties, but it looks like everything's going to be a-okay. Today, I have a very special guest, somebody that actually means quite a bit to me personally. His name is Greg Drolet, and he is the founder, the CEO, whatever you want to call it, the mastermind, the genius behind the Inspired Life Academy. And his work has changed me and inspired me. And I know it's going to do the same for you. So without further ado, let me bring in my favorite person, Mr. Greg Drolet.
Hello, Julianne. How you doing?
Fantastic. It is so good to see your face.
Well, it's spectacular to be on with you. And, you've got a tremendous show here that is really helping a lot of people. So it's an honor to be with you today. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Gosh, I feel like we haven't seen each other since COVID hit. So
Yeah.
It's been a while. But obviously I know you, but not everybody does. And how I met you was through my own fitness journey. And I would love for you to share with our audience a little bit about who you are and your own wellness journey.
Sure. It's been a long journey. Although it seems like just yesterday that we got started on this, but just kind of going back in early ancient history. I'm a Southern California boy, born and raised. Came from a family of 9 kids. I was number 6, and so that was really the beginning of my wellness journey because, he just couldn't afford to be going to the doctor at the drop of a hat. And my mom was always on the forefront of health and wellness, reading books and in all different aspects, from spiritual health to physical health and emotional, and being a human behavior expert with 9 different kids that she had to deal with in terms of our varying personalities. But I was never the biggest person when I played athletics. And so I always looked at, okay, how do I compensate for, my lack of size, and needed to do it with energy and with working out and just, having a greater intensity than maybe other people might have. And, I think there's probably one thing that I've spent most of my life in, and that's trying to the best of my ability to really stay healthy physically and emotionally. And in all, I have 6 areas of my life that I look at, and looking at all of those. So yeah, health and wellness in the big picture has been a big, major part of my life. And as I went through, working in corporate America, and again, it takes a lot of energy to be able to live life. And so I started looking at what I was really good at, and my purpose in life is really to be an inspiring resource to people. And so when I look at what I need to do, and the group of people that I choose to work with, health and overall holistic health, as I would like to call it, is vitally important, really important. And so the Inspired Life Academy is my online platform to be able to do that. So I mean, there's a lot in between all of this, but that's kind of the broad overview. I've done just about everything there is to do in corporate America, and run my own businesses, and so and here we are today.
Well, there's something that I'd love to share with the audience. And I've shared this story before, but not everybody is familiar with your face. So when I first started working out with you, I look over at you and your plank abilities, and then I was like, oh, he can put a weight on his back. Okay, I could do that. And then I'm like, okay, I could do 25 pounds. And then I'm like, woo, I think I can do it. I look over and you got like 50 pounds on your back. I'm just like, I'm never going to catch up. That's a little competitive in me, but
Sure.
It was so much fun.
Well, I think that was for the audience, really. The relationship that Julianne and I have was instantaneous, really. We just both really appreciated the energy that we each have. And, she'd show up, and, she was right there wanting to compete with me. And, we're dropping everybody else on the gym floor. But, she was hanging in. So, yeah, we've had fun over the years, haven't we?
We most certainly have. And, the thing is, too, is although I am competitive, I'm rooting for you at the same time.
Sure.
So I think that there's a slight difference, because sometimes, when people think of competition or people being competitive, it's like cutthroat and it was never been like that. I've always celebrated your wins as well. But anyway, enough about that. I would love for you to talk a little bit, because you are amazing at helping people change their perspectives and helping people see things differently in a more productive way. With COVID, and I've personally been affected recently by that. And, it kind of put me in this funk, and it took me a little while to get out of that. So what kind of, you've coached me before, so I know what you are really good at, and this is one of those things. And I'd love for you to share, like, maybe some ideas, what you see that people could change in general about their perspective, or just even a different way to look at something.
I have been blessed with a positive attitude in virtually every aspect of my life. Stuff happens to us, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
None of us had any control over COVID, but that relating to the old quote, we don't have any control over the circumstance, but we do have control over how we respond to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is probably the biggest area, and I know it's the biggest area that we can all grow in. And you and I have talked about this, extensively, and that is, and I think what you're doing with this show is spectacular as it relates to this particular area. And that is recognizing the importance of emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really the only area where we're really going to have the big impact. And so how, I love the quote that you don't attract, what you want, you attract who you are. So who are we becoming? And so, this idea of emotional intelligence and being able to be aware, which is the cornerstone high emotional intelligence, is that, okay, so COVID hits and now we're in a funk. We can't travel. We can't go to the grocery store. All the stuff that we were used to doing, right? And so what can you do? Well, we can always do something. And I think this is one of the reasons why I believe that your why is so important. And it's like, okay, I have this particular circumstance, but why is it important that I embrace a positive attitude? I think if we asked ourselves that one question, okay, why is it important that I embrace a positive attitude around whatever? I always joke that, if you hurt yourself physically, you break an arm. Well, most people just stop working out, and it's an opportunity to say, well, this is awesome because now I can work on my legs and my lower body and my cardio. It doesn't mean I stop. It's just, okay, now I'm going to find something positive about breaking my arm. And so, every day we have a choice. We have a choice to get up and be either positive or negative. There's really no other choices in there. And so choosing the route of being positive, it's just going to, number one, it's far more physically beneficial to us, isn't it? Right? In terms of the number of hormones and chemicals, we're basically a chemical factory, and we have control over which chemicals we put into our body. And so being negative is dumping negative chemicals into it. Being positive, it's the whole other side of it, which I'm sure you've talked extensively about.
Well, it doesn't hurt. Oops, I can hear my on your side.
Did we just lose? I just lost video. Do you have me?
I have you.
Okay. All right. Great. Don't know what that was about. Anyway, sorry about that.
How bizarre. Who knows? Electronics these days.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. We were talking. Oh, yes. Okay. So we were talking about dumping the chemicals into our bloodstream and just how it affects our overall health. And yes, I do talk about that. However, it needs to be said again and again and again, and from different people and from different ways and everything else, even for me. And I know it to be true. So,
that's for all of us, even in myself. I've spent decades in, the human behavior field, and I'm constantly talking to myself. But that's also, you've heard me use this phrase, this is a lifelong journey that we're on. Everybody, we live in this microwave society, but it took us 20, 30, 40 years to get to where we are. It's going to take us some time. And, sitting in with you on all of these various shows that you're doing, to be able to start hearing the same thing a different way until you find the one that resonates with you.
Exactly.
Right? And, I know I'm not going to resonate necessarily with everybody, but if I can resonate with one person today, that's a win, right?
It is. And that's one of my favorite quotes of yours. I don't know if it's yours originally, but I still attribute it to you, and that it's a microwave society.
Yeah.
It really is. We just want everything right now. I swear it's an American thing more than anything, but it doesn't really matter. That's just sort of where we are at this point. So
yeah, I think to that point, we really do need to slow down. I've said this many times over the last year that I think that's one of the greatest benefits that's come from COVID, is that we've been forced to slow down and to reflect on our life. And, that going into what I like to call, it's a term from Matthew Kelly in his book, The Rhythm of Life, but it's going into that classroom of silence to be able to reflect on our life. Because without that reflection and being honest with ourselves in that reflection, we're never going to really live the kind of life that we ideally want. And so taking time out whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, to go into that classroom of silence, to look at our lives and see where am I doing well and where do I need to transform my life. And slowing our cooling our jets a little bit, as sometimes you'll hear, is I think it's important. And if I can encourage anybody to do one thing this year, if you want to really transform your life this year, go into that classroom of silence and start doing some writing, reading, and just thinking about what you're thinking about. Because most people aren't thinking. Most people think they're thinking, but they're really not thinking. They're just reacting based on habits that they've developed over the many years of living. And not all of them serve you well.
Exactly. And I've heard you say that before about thinking, and most people think they're thinking, but they're not. And I've actually really taken a look at that recently. And it's kind of like, you're thinking when you get tired.
Yeah.
That it's kind of one of those things where, I'm sorry. I just want to mention really quickly, Christy Jones is in the house and she's watching, and she's a good friend of mine. And she's also a fellow personal growth person in the holistic wellness arena. So anyway, what I was going to say though, is that I think it was Einstein. And I'm not 100% sure, but he used to go fishing every single day and he never caught any fish. And everybody was like, "You're so smart. Why don't you catch any fish?" And he said, "Well, it would probably help if I put some bait on the hook. But you know what? Nobody bothers me when I'm out there fishing." So yeah. I thought it was brilliant. That's one way.
Totally. It's we're in an interesting time in history. Mm-hmm. And, I think that your show is so important to the world because you're exposing people to different people. And, I know your journey. And, that's why I felt very honored and blessed to be able to, be here today because we are. This is a time in history that is unique. Mm-hmm. Okay, unique in a lot of different ways. And anybody that is really serious about becoming the best version of themselves that they possibly can be, now is the time to start looking into our lives and saying, how am I going to do that? Change is inevitable, right? In my brain, I'm still 21 years old, right? But these wrinkles, that's a lot of road travel over over time. But we can control the way that, and the way that we're going to move forward, because most people are living a life by default, not by design. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm passionate about. I know that you're passionate about, is really just being a resource to be able to help people begin to understand the importance of developing a life by design. Design the life that you wanted. The time to design the rest of your life is now, right? And so, I'm not the smartest guy around, but I know what my strengths and weaknesses are. And I know that I know that I'm a resource for people. That's really what I want to be. Is just to be a guide. I'm just a guide on the same journey of life and the same road as everybody else. Just might be a little further or behind than others.
I love that. I've always loved that. And there's something you were talking about before when we first started talking, and it's something that I've known about you and Greg Land. And for those of you who are not aware of what I'm referring to, it's a real place. So you mentioned that you're a positive person, and I know that to be true, even when things don't necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily be the way that you would prefer them to be. You still have such a positive attitude, and you're able to see, just the positivity and find that little gem that, I hate the term silver lining, but yeah, I guess so. Like you can look at COVID and say, now's the time for you to sit back and actually start to think about who you are, what you want, and all of that. that's a bonus, or maybe spend more time with your family. So, I know that you have certain daily habits or rituals, if you prefer to call them, that you do to keep your cup full. What does that look like for you?
For me, it's I'm an early morning person. I send out a morning inspiration message that I've been sending out for going on 11 years now every day, and
I get it right here.
yeah, it's so my routine is get up, grab my cup of coffee, and the first thing I do is send out that inspirational message. It's a short message, but then I am most creative in the morning, and I think that's something that's important for people to look at is when are you most, if whether it's creative or when do you have the most energy, when are you the most effective. I love the morning. It's dark out. I get to see the sunrise. There's nobody there to disrupt my train of thought. And so that's when I do my personal development reading for myself personally. And when I'm reading, I'm always reading with a journal next to me. If for some reason I don't have a journal, then I'm writing in my book someplace, highlighting. My wife says that she loves to read my books after I've read them because she just likes to read the highlights and what notes I made in the margins.
I love that.
So that's it. And then it's oftentimes my one-on-one coaching begins very early in the morning too, because I have people in different time zones. But that happens after I've worked on myself. And so and then somewhere in the day, depending upon the day, everything's calendared. I calendar everything. I'll get a workout in for typically an hour to an hour and a half, 60 to 90 minutes.
Wow.
So I've got a lot of things that are, but I run off of my calendar. There's a lot of things that I do with masterminds and that I do with groups of people. But if it's not in the calendar, it's probably not going to happen.
That is such an important point. People tend to think that a calendar is restricting, or planning out their day is restricting, or somehow they'll have less freedom. And yet they've never tried it. And the amazing thing is when you do, make a calendar and schedule things out, you get everything you want to get done. And then you have extra time to do whatever you want to do.
Right. Yeah. It's about creating a habit. It's about developing a habit for anything. And in the beginning, anything new is hard to do. But again, it comes back to, okay, what's your thought process behind it? All right. And so starting off with something little and then building the habit around that. Don't start writing a book tomorrow if you've never done any journaling.
That's a very good point. And it's something like most people, myself included, want to go from 0 to 60. So let's say I wanted to try meditating. What's 5 minutes? I'm going to go for an hour and a half. And then all of a sudden, I don't want to do it. And I don't have time. Whereas if I just start with the 5 minutes and builds up, then I'm.
Yeah. And the thing that's a really good point. I think part of the meditating is going into that classroom of silence that we've talked about, and time for reflection. And I think some people, when they hear about meditating and they start trying meditating, they get too judgmental of themselves about, oh, that didn't work perfectly. Well, I don't think anything's ever going to work perfectly. So I was never, I don't know if gifted or whatever it is, but perfection has never been one of my qualities. It wasn't a curse for me.
Yeah. Well, and for somebody like me, it can be a curse. And I'm learning to work with that and make it positive instead of a negative. So,
Sure.
and then the less I can think of it as negative, the easier it is for me to be with it. It's kind of funny. It's like once it's the same, it's the idea of changing your mindset and having emotional intelligence. If you stop beating yourself up and fighting something, all of a sudden things get a lot easier,
Mhm. Yeah. That's a really interesting point that you said there, um, because I think as human beings we're really good at beating ourselves up and being overly judgmental of who we are, what we are, all of that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think a lot of that is, there's so many different ways you can go, but I think it's important to recognize that so much of the stuff as far as how we judge ourselves is
Mhm.
coming from our early childhood
Yes.
in one way or another, right? And so I always like to teach on the idea that, we've got our subconscious mind or non-conscious mind, and we've got our conscious mind. So the conscious mind is just like a sponge. It's going to take anything that it's fed, right? It has
Yep.
the gatekeeper is the conscious mind. And so, but the challenge comes with the fact that that conscious mind doesn't develop in us as children until we're 6 or 7 years old. And so, what's happening in those first few years of our life. And again, this is like one of the things I like to do with people is let's take a journey back
Mhm.
into your earliest memory of, maybe you were like last night, I had somebody on the phone and or on a coaching call, and he was saying that his whole thing growing up was what's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
And so he grew up with the idea that I'm not good enough. So even today, 40 years later, he's got this, he's only now working through this process. So we're working through it together of I'm not good enough. When somebody says, well, what if we did it this way? Or why did you do it that way? His immediate thought is, I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me?
It's
Right.
like
And so
Pavlov.
huh?
It's like
Yeah,
Pavlov.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
automatic.
So anything that we're doing, the one thing that's not unique, that is similar to all of us, is that every day we're with people,
Mhm.
right? That's the universal. And so, um, some people will ask me what I do. Life coach, you this, you that, and I go, no, I'm just a human behavior nut, right? I'm fascinated by human behavior and how do we maximize our potential as human beings based on the gifts that God's given us.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
we're all gifted in different ways. And I think there's two really great questions for all of us to ask ourselves. One is, what am I passionate about?
Mhm.
And the other is, what am I gifted in, or what are my talents? What are
Oh, I
my
love that.
strengths? Right? Um, I love the idea that people are constantly climbing this ladder to success, climbing this corporate ladder to success, and then they get to the top and they realize it's been leaning up against the wrong wall for many years.
Exactly.
All right, that's so. Uh, Again, it's this lifelong journey that if we'll embrace the lifelong journey of learning and growing and transforming,
Mhm.
then our life is going to be so much more enjoyable. It really is. And I think that as this relates to COVID, going back to your other point, if anybody thinks that we're going back to 2019 or 2018, just get over that idea, because this is a time, and it depends on what you're doing relative to your learning, but uh, this is a time where we should all be looking at reinventing ourselves,
Mhm.
transforming our lives, and reinventing ourselves, looking at what we're passionate about and what we're gifted in.
I love that. Well, we do have to go to a commercial break. And on that note, I think it's a perfect time. So we'll be right back. Okay. Oh, love Greg. He's one of my favorite humans. And obviously, he is a wealth of positivity. And I just love his philosophies on life and the importance of emotional intelligence, as well as mindset. So before we go to commercial break, I want to say hello to everybody who's watching. Thank you so much for joining us live, and we will be right back in just a moment. Hey everyone, it is Julianne Meyer, the host of Own Your Wellness, and we're back again. And I can't believe we're already halfway through. Oh my goodness, time always flies whenever I have the honor and the privilege of speaking with Mr. Greg Drolet. Let's bring him back. Hello again.
Hello.
I'm like looking at the time thinking, oh man.
That's the way it goes, isn't it?
It does. It goes quickly. So, I just wanted to talk about, you've known me for a while. Like, you know that I used to love that word pivot until it became like the word of COVID. Yeah. And now it kind of like it's fingernails on a chalkboard. But there's something that I would love to talk to you about is your ability to shift gears and not just stop dead in your tracks. And what I'm referring to, for example, is when COVID hit, they closed the gym. And so now all of a sudden your normal workout routine is just gone. And most people just didn't bother to even try anything else or keep moving. But you were able to, keep on your wellness journey. I would never say everybody's journey is perfect because that's very wildly untrue. But I will say that you were able to, for example, start working in your garden. And that was a fantastic workout. So I would love for you to explain how it is that you are able to not just stop at those mental blocks and just sort of like, look at it from a different perspective instead of like, oh, I can't take the elevator, so now I can't get to the top of the building. There's
Sure.
another way maybe.
Yeah. I think that there's probably a couple of things that I say to myself, and again, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, right? But I think one of the things I'll say is, there's always a way, right? There's always a way, and the other one, which I'm sure everybody has heard in one way, shape, or another, is if the dream is big enough, the how doesn't matter, right? And yeah. I mean. So, I looked at it, so my goodness, what did they do before they had gyms?
Exactly. Exactly.
right? Right. And so I looked at it and I said, well, I've got this backyard, I want to transform. I'm just going to, put my MyZone heart rate monitor on and use it as a workout, because that's historically what people did. They didn't put their heart rate monitors on, but what they do, they got up early, they worked from sunrise to sunset, and that's how they got their physical exercise. They didn't have to go to a gym, but our lifestyles today are so sedentary that we have to be more intentional with it. And so if, it's everybody, all of us have done this. Okay. We've got every intention of going to the gym, or every intention of getting on the bike or on the treadmill. I intend to do that 3 times a week, but we don't intentionally do it. Right. So we have to have that action. So the word needs to be action. Right. And it's not about perfection. Right. There's no action and perfection. They don't necessarily go hand in hand. And so, act, and then you learn from it. So, you and I have talked about this over the course of time. It's you test, you fail, you learn, right? You improve, and then you do it all over again. You test, you fail, you learn, and you improve. And so, but you've got to have a big enough why around anything. And so, if your health is important to you, we can either make excuses or we can make progress, but we can't do both. And so we have to, and that's another thing I talk about. Why do you want to do this? Why is your health important to you? Why did you want to do this show? Right? It's that why has to be connected at a deep emotional level. If it's connected at the deep emotional level, that you're always going to find a way. But if it's not connected, then you're always going to find an excuse.
I love that. It's very well said. And, the other thing that I'd love to add to that is sometimes when I'm feeling, say, petty, for example, or, I just am not, for whatever reason, I can come up with a really superficial reason, and that'll get me to go, I want my boyfriend to be attracted to me, for example. And that'll get me in the door,
Sure.
I mean, the thing that works for me, because definitely there's got to be that connection, that emotional why. Otherwise, you're right. Anything superficial will only get you so far, but sometimes that's easy for me to just like, okay, that's good enough to get me off the couch.
Yeah. And I think it's something that I would like your audience to explore, and this is the thing that I believe is important, is that we need to start going deeper, because as a society, we're dealing with superficial issues, right? And what we really need to do, whatever the challenge you might have in your life, is we need to stop looking at it superficially and start going deeper to find out what the root is. Because if the root isn't healthy, the fruit isn't going to be healthy.
Ooh, right? I don't think I've ever heard you say that one.
That's what happens when you start gardening. But no, I mean, the soil, okay, if let's say you're overweight, okay, well, what's the root of that? The root of it is not just the fact that you are, drinking beer and eating, potato chips. Yeah. There's a deeper element to that has to be addressed. And that's, I think continually asking ourselves that question, why? Okay. So, I want to lose weight. Well, why? Well, because I want to be more attractive to my, husband, boyfriend, partner, whatever. Okay. Why? So you're taking that question, why, and going 6-7 levels deep in order to get to the real root of the problem. Right?
It's interesting because my spiritual mentor has said basically that same thing during our soul journey. So I just really, I love hearing when the same information crosses
Yeah.
around, it's said slightly differently, but yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's
anybody that has kids, has children, invariably you're telling them stuff for years and years, and then they come home from a friend's home and they'll say, "Hey, Mom, do you know what Mr. So and so said?"
always,
So,
always.
I always like to use the phrase, "When the student is ready, the teacher will appear."
That's very true. It is true.
Yeah. You just can't force people to grow. And,
No.
and so, everybody, I haven't run across many people that don't want to grow.
Mhm.
They intend to grow, but somewhere deep down, there's something that's stopping them from connecting with a coach or reading a book or listening to an audio. There's some story that's been told over and over again, right?
Yep.
It's those stories that we tell ourselves in order to get through.
There's something in AA that they said, and you just reminded me of it. And that is when somebody's about to like go out and use after they haven't for a while, is play the tape through. Think this all the way through about where you're going to end up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that we hear a lot of these phrases and stuff, right?
Mhm.
But we hear them, but we don't really stop and think, well, wait a minute, what does this really mean?
Exactly.
Right. And so I'm a word person. I
Mhm.
over the years I've cultivated this love of words, and so I'll hear the one that I always catch is somebody says, well, I'm going to try that. Right. Well, that word there just doesn't sit well with me. I'll say try, and they go, oh yeah, no, we're gonna do it. Right. But all these words that we use, success, what does that really mean to you?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Significance, what does that mean? Spiritual health, what does that mean?
Mhm. Exactly. And if you're borrowing somebody else's and it doesn't resonate with you, that's of no service to you whatsoever. So I love that you bring that up, because even wealth means something different to one person and another. And I'm not talking money, I'm talking wealth. To some
Yeah,
people, wealth means money.
sure.
So,
And that's an interesting, when you're just kind of an example, that's an interesting thing to explore at a deeper
mhm,
level, right?
absolutely.
What's the foundation of why that financial wealth is more important than um, spiritual values or moral values? So
Yeah, no, that's a big one. So, I know you're a reader. What are you reading these days?
well, I am reading John Maxwell's newest book, Change Your World, which is more than a book. It's an actual movement that is taking place where we are creating transformation tables. It's an international movement of transformation tables that are being held all over the world, based on what John's been working with over the last 6 years in various countries around the world. So that's my latest book, is Change Your World. It just came out January 26th, I think.
Well, something that I'd love for you to touch on and go into more depth than what I'm going to say is, you have always said to stand on the shoulders of giants. And I think that there's a lot of people who really do want to find somebody that they can pay attention to. And I hate to use the term follow, but let's say learn from. And I love that idea of stand on the shoulders of giants. So if you wouldn't mind describing that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of distractions today. A lot of distractions, and there's not as much reading taking place as there could be, or I believe should be.
Mhm.
Um, I was just talking with somebody who has newborn twins that are 8 weeks old, and they're putting them in front of the television set. Um, and found out they're even doing that now, I understand, in NICU units, where
Oh,
they're
wow.
putting Sesame Street on for the kids. And so there's a lot of, I'll just share with you some of the giants that I have followed.
Mhm.
Napoleon Hill, classic Think and Grow Rich, and all the other things that anybody that's in the personal development world in one way, shape, or another is familiar with Napoleon Hill.
Mhm.
John Maxwell is a big one for me because it's really about, for me, the giants that I want to stand on their shoulders. I need to respect the values that they have as it relates to life. Matthew Kelly is probably somebody that not a lot of people know, but his book, The Rhythm of Life, was a very significant book in my life at that time. There's a lot of people that I love the way they're pretty straightforward. And I think as I've gotten older, I've become more straightforward. Um, but I believe I like Darren Hardy's work.
Yes.
Man, if I turned around to my bookcase here, I'd probably find another 50. But there's a lot of there's a guy by the name of Ian Gray who wrote a small little pamphlet. In fact, I happen to have it right here. It's called The Common Denominator of Success. You can find it online. I give it away all the time. So there's somebody that's not known real well by a lot of people. So I have a tendency to go towards some of what I might consider the classic early writers.
Yeah.
The Stoics, right? Marcus Aurelius and that era of all the Stoics. I have the Daily Stoics book that I read. Okay,
Me
there you
too.
go.
And I got the journal.
Oh, cool. One of my all-time favorite writers, and it's somebody that if somebody is wanting to start reading, it's one of the guys that I love to get people started with, and that's Og Mandino. The work that Og Mandino has put out he didn't put out a lot. He put out maybe 12, 15 books, but the messages are very, very important messages told in story format, parables and stories, and he's another one of my favorites. So there's a small list.
Yeah, just so you know, since we last talked and I asked you about Og, one of his books, I've read 3.
Oh yeah, nice.
And they're easy, they're page turners, and they're brilliant because I love it. I don't want to be told what to do. I want to hear a story. So,
Sure.
And
right.
it's, giving good advice, but not, telling me how to do it, I guess. I mean, that didn't even come out right, but you know what I'm getting at.
Sure. And if you look at historically, the way that cultures grew and learned, it was through storytelling.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that's one of the things for us as humans, if we can learn to master the art of storytelling to be able to influence effectively, and then also be aware of the stories we're telling ourselves.
That's a big one.
It is.
It's like, how do you become aware of something you're not aware of? Because if you just automatically accept a story as true, in fact, you don't think it's a story. So,
yeah. Well, here's an interesting statistic that I only recently learned, and that is that so these stories we tell ourselves and the memories that we have, 50% of the memories that we have didn't even occur.
Exactly.
Right. So those are things to keep in perspective. But yeah, and what I've done over the course of time is I used to read very widely. I read more narrowly now, and I'll listen to the people that I do follow, and then I'll read what they're reading in order to be able to expand my area of personal development. And I have my, so my part of my routine is, I do my personal development stuff at night.
Mhm.
That's my fun reading, right?
I
You
love
know,
it. Well, that's part of the reason why I wanted to ask you what you read, because that's how I like to find whoever I want. It's like I want to follow that thread. So if I resonate with you and you are reading something, then I think it's gonna be good for me too. So I love that you think along the same lines.
yeah. Somebody else just popped in that wrote a brilliant book. Stephen Scott wrote a book called "The Richest Man Who Ever Lived,"
Oh,
um, and it's a great story, and it's also kind of a workbook at the same time, which is another a great book and a great author.
I love it. We are running out of time. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about the Inspired Life Academy. Where can they find you online? Is it the Inspired Life Academy or just Inspired Life?
It's the Inspired Life Academy.
Mhm.
That is my online training platform. So I do one-on-one coaching, I do masterminds, and to expand my reach over the years, the Inspired Life Academy is the online training platform that I use to stay connected with people. There's worksheets, there's videos, there's it's my take on life, and there's I try to take a creative approach to it. I'm a guitar player, and so I've put some of the lessons in there based on the structure of a guitar. So my thing is have fun, make money, and make a difference.
I love
Right?
it. And as somebody who has been a part of the Inspired Life Academy, I can give a testimonial to how wonderful it is. And yes, definitely worth checking out. We are almost out of time, as I mentioned. We got about 3 minutes left. Is there anything else you would love to share, like any parting thoughts or words of wisdom for the audience?
Yeah, I think that we've been going through some challenging times here, globally, around the
Mm-hmm.
world, right? Um, but I think if there's my word for the year is transformation.
Mm, love
Um,
it.
but I think the one word that I really want to emphasize to people tonight is hope.
Mm,
And hope and optimism are not the same thing.
no.
I'm a very optimistic person, but it's more of optimism is more of a passive, whereas hope is more of an action
Mm.
related area. And let's see if I can find the quote real quick. Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to change, to see that they do not remain the same.
That's
That's
beautiful.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it's
I got
Augustine of Hippo. Um, and I think that's a brilliant. I love that quote. And so yeah, I think it's there's a lot of garbage going around,
mhm.
happening. Put the blinders on, and somebody said to me one time, right wing's going to tell you one thing, left wing's going to tell you something else. Worry about the bird in the middle. That's you and your family,
Exactly.
right? And just if we will continue to grow ourselves, we have to grow ourselves first before we can change the world. We have to change ourselves, transform ourselves before we can change the world. And so that's my parting comment. So go out there, touch everybody with love in your heart, and just realize that before you can ask for a hand, you have to touch a heart. So thank you very much for having the opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm gonna just hang tight in the waiting room for me, and we'll be right back. So,
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
Okay. So wait, let's see. Fingers. You think one day I'll get this? Check it out, theinspiredlifeacademy.com. Obviously, Greg is a good friend of mine and an inspiration and a light as well. And I am so grateful to have him in my life. And I know that you are just as inspired as I am. So go ahead and check out some of the books he mentioned. And thank you again for watching. We will be back on Monday. And until then, stay safe and have a great day.